Good morning, Great Valley. I am Zach Heisey.
And I'm Brady Calhoun.
And this is Newsbreak. Today we have kind of a conversation going on to get some student input about some of the issues we have going on today.
Today in politics.
Today in politics.
And guess what? There's a lot.
There is a lot to cover.
Oh my God, crazy a lot.
So today the first thing, which is probably one of the more prominent things in the news, is Obamacare. So
Obamacare.
Most recently and notably, we've had the issue of President Obama and what people are calling a real ball drop on the whole "you can keep your plan."
Ooh.
I mean,
are you referencing the 4.6 million plans that have been dropped?
I am.
I love it.
It is a very interesting, peculiar, interesting.
See, that's why I think politicians shouldn't make promises they can't keep to get some votes. You know, it's like, come on, guys, be honest for once.
Be honest.
It's too much to ask for. Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Most notably, like I said, the amount of people that are not being able to keep their plans, they're being told they have to cancel. Many small businesses taking a lot of hits, as well as premiums that are more costly than they were promised and more costly than existing plans.
I mean, it makes sense though, because the healthcare bill was largely supported by Big Pharma, and you know, Big Pharma as this mega corporation collective of all these different companies. They don't want the small guys to compete. They don't want the small guys to have these cheaper plans. They want the increased revenue that will inevitably come from Obamacare, and there will be an increased revenue for Big Pharma because you know they get a say in what's being done with their lobbyists.
Yes, you do get a couple of inputs here. You of course have the fact that it's covering more, so you do have more money that needs to be spread around thoroughly. So you have the issue where you have healthcare companies like United Healthcare charging more. You also have more things covered, so that's going to cost more. But still, the premiums are incredibly high.
Yeah, I've always been kind of curious. Is this in the individual mandate, which is of course the most controversial part of the healthcare bill? Is it truly, going to fix all the problems that Obama said it would fix? Because, Obama and Sebelius, I believe, said that the individual mandate would allow for the revenue to come in to fund all these other expansions, such as the expansion of Medicare. And I'm just curious if that's really the case. Part of me says it's not.
That's going to mostly depend on the amount of revenue that comes in from Obamacare. Enrollment ratings were at the launch significantly higher, and that was what they were pinning on some of the website issues to begin with, which we'll get to in a minute. But as of right now, enrollment expectations are significantly lower. We are seeing some drops in that, and that's going to greatly depend on it because it's all going to depend on the money coming in, and if the money coming in is not enough, then that kind of savings is not going to be able to be used to apply.
And I think we can both agree that right now what we don't need is more debt.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I mean, I said we were going to get to the website, and I'd like to touch on that just a second now. The website, of course, major issue. The complete collapse of that piece of infrastructure at the launch of this, originally pinned on over an unexpected amount of turnout. However, now it's becoming understood that it's because of website problems. And after further reading, it was the government of Canada that hired this firm to build their government websites in 2008. And they did such a poor job, they were fired.
So Canada fired these guys.
Canada fired these guys.
And we hired them.
And we hired them at a discount rate.
I heard, now don't hold me to this, but I've heard that the lines of code used in this website amounted to around 500 million. And to put that in perspective, the amount of code total to run all of Facebook is around 30 million. So it just goes to show that this was over-engineered. This website was heavily over-engineered.
Absolutely.
And if you look at it from a programming perspective, it's not hard to understand, not hard to believe why it's failing and why it's so buggy.
Yeah. So obviously we had some serious problems with the engineering of this. The development has been a mess. They're saying that the problems are being fixed. However, contradicting reports are coming in with Kathleen Sebelius, who is in charge of this operation, saying that the fixes are going to be done relatively soon. However, the contractor and inside sources saying this could be months to even over a year to fix, which would be terrible. I know when I personally went on to check out the enrollment myself to see what the process would be like, I could not log on.
Now, I'm curious about your opinion on this. Do you think, because of the recent circumstances in Congress, how the Republicans, especially the Tea Party-backed ones, wanted to really hold out to stop Obamacare, do you think in hindsight that maybe they were on the right side of this, that Obamacare should have been held off a couple years until it could be better implemented, that they were right, essentially?
You know, at first, one of the main issues they were saying was hold it off for the people. Honestly, I feel that for the people, they've been giving 3 years notice. Now, holding it off for the infrastructure development is a different issue. We didn't quite know about that, and that's on them. Do I think they need more time? No, I think they had 3 years to develop this process, and that's kind of on them for that. I think as far as holding it off, A, there was no way we could have known, and B, they were doing it for the people. And I think with holding it off and repealing it in general, you know, they haven't really offered too much in response. If they were to say, here is our comprehensive healthcare reform bill to replace Obamacare with, that would be a different conversation. But in this case, they were just going to drop it entirely.
Okay. I keep on talking about healthcare because it's really interesting. It's a very important subject and one that's going to affect all of us. Like a lot of kids, they don't like politics. You know, they're like, that doesn't affect me. But this is one thing that does, and it will affect you as soon as you get to that age, 26 or whatever, where you can drop from your parents' healthcare program. And once that happens, you know, you're out there. You're one of these people who is uninsured and has to find insurance. So the decisions made now are going to impact you. And you got to remember that.
That's a great point. I know that one of the points that they were trying to make was enrollment for younger people is up considerably. That's one of the target demographics they're going for. So that would be the age 26 to 35 range, I believe, is what they consider the younger age group. And they said that's one of the main target demographics where they're going for and where they've seen a lot of enrollment.
Oh, that's good, I guess. I mean, if that's what they wanted, at least something's going right for them. Do you want to change pace, or do you want to keep talking about this?
I'd like to move on to the National Security Agency issues that have been going on, which I know a lot of students I've been hearing have had a lot to say about. Now, of course, the National Security Agency has been getting in a lot of trouble recently, specifically for spying on not only American citizens, but foreign governments. Germany was outraged.
Brazil and Mexico.
We have, and not only that, but you know, the regulations going into place, the phone tapping. It's just outrageous. And of course, most of this being enabled by the Patriot Act, and a lot of it being done behind doors.
Indeed. Something to note is that the NSA's this center, I forget what the exact center name is, that collects all this data for this operation, because it is an operation, a giant operation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was commissioned and was starting to be built under Bush, but it was further financed and continued under Obama. So this is not a single-party issue. This affects both of the major parties. They both have vowed support for this. A lot of commentators have vowed support for this back before everybody knew what it was doing. Like, this is going to save us from terrorism. But a lot of people nowadays in this post-9/11 age are willing to sacrifice their personal freedoms for terrorism. And I think that's something to be afraid of, that, you know, if you give away your freedoms, you might not be able to get them back necessarily. So be wary of that.
You hit that issue kind of right on the nose. I mean, you have the post-9/11 mentality. Going right after 9/11, you saw a lot of people really racing to support anti-terrorism, homeland security, and things like that to keep us safe. And it was the Bush administration and the NSA at the time that really rode on that wave to get things like the Patriot Act passed that were, you know, for your own safety and to prevent terrorists. And a lot of these technologies were implemented, yes, you know, a couple of them did do good to protecting it. A lot of airport security measures that many people see it as a hindrance, but some of them do catch terrorists.
But you got to look at it on the grand scale of things. You know, compare how many people in this country terrorists have killed to the stake of our freedom as a people. Because this doesn't just affect a few token minorities. These agencies scan everyone. They try to target in on certain people, but to keep things fair, they cannot officially target groups. They have to equally reach out and spy on everyone, it's frightening, because everything you've ever looked up, everything you've ever said, done, you know, even this broadcast right now is liable to be investigated by the government. And you know, you gotta worry about this stuff, because this can progress a lot. Because before 9/11, no one ever thought this would happen. But, you know, here we are. 12 years later, and things have changed so drastically, and they're going to keep changing. We're moving down a path towards more autocratic rule, and we have been for a while, but it's just something people have to be aware of, that, you know, the United States of America in 50 years might not be what it originally, it might not fit the original plan of the founders anymore.
Right now, one of those things you were talking about is a huge issue with copyright. The TPP, or Trans-Pacific Partnership, is currently being under deliberations. And that is one of those serious issues people are saying, wait, this is not where we were meant to be going. And with that, it's extending copyright to the life of the author plus 100 years. So if you're not too sure what that would mean, say, Star Wars. That would mean George Lucas, who holds the patent for Star Wars, or I guess what would be Disney now. But I believe it's originally in George Lucas.
20th Century Fox also holds some patents to the movies individually.
But I think specifically pertaining to the author being George Lucas, it would be his life, so until George Lucas dies, plus 100 years, meaning none of us, really none of us, are going to be ever going to see a Star Wars become out of patent. And nowadays you have corporations like Disney buying up these patents, and those go on forever.
And putting patents on ideas.
Oh, yeah.
I think a while back, Apple filed a patent for a rectangular shaped phone or something like that. Like these extremely generic patents. It's terrible. Like, I'm not against low-term, short-term patents. I think that's a good idea to protect the integrity of the inventor.
Absolutely.
But don't make it as long as they're making it. Make it 5 years. Make it a year. Make it something reasonable where the inventor can at least profit from their idea. But then after that, you know, ingenuity. People can work on developing new designs. They can innovate.
And that was the original
on the
intention.
existing projects.
That was the original intention when copyright came into prevalence. When it was created, it began in England in the 1700s, but it's just grown over time, and especially in the late 20th century, it became an issue. And now we're seeing it just go blown out of proportion, and it comes back to the NSA issue, where you have people pirating softwares, pirating movies, pirating DVDs, and now you have the MPAA, Motion Picture Association, the RIAA, and a lot of these music and movie places pushing for stricter copyright laws, but in the same way restricting use of other technologies.
See, I'm always a very big critic of people willingly giving away protections, or no, willingly giving away their freedoms for protections from perceived ills. And especially companies are big on this, because companies, you know, they have a lot to lose. They have the revenues to lose. They have the customers to lose. So companies are big on these pro-protection programs. But what they don't realize, and what the individual doesn't realize, is that the government and associated bodies can, you know, come back and strengthen these plans to a point where it can just crush everything. And, you know, you're getting into like 1984, Brave New World territory, where these dystopian worlds that these authors imagined late in the 1950s and 60s, they're suddenly alive. They're suddenly reality. And that's what I'm very, very much afraid of.
It makes those people that wore the tinfoil hats that we used to laugh at about conspiracy theories, it makes them seem a little bit more serious now.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm surprised there hasn't been a massive resurgence of conspiracy theories, because this is definitely the age to be living in it. Mm-hmm. But maybe that's the problem, you know? People have become so complacent with things, they don't want to, you know, conspire against the powers that be.
And it's a lot that has to do with backdoor deals. I mean, you know, TPP, back when soap and people were developed, if you remember that issue. A lot of politicians, a lot of lobbyists, a lot of companies made these decisions, not a lot of public intervention. I mean, if the way our government voted on some of these bills was determined by the public opinion, I think a lot of things would look a lot different, especially things like this.
And I'm generally in favor of the public choosing their own destinies. Although I must note that it's better to have an educated public choosing their own destinies than an uneducated public, because an uneducated public can be swayed, you know, in the same way these companies sway things. Like, the company can say, okay, well, I can't sway your politicians, but I can sway these people with cheap goods and, you know, bonuses. Much in the way, you know, government uses welfare and similar things to sway voters. And, you know, it's not right. It's never been right. Both parties are guilty of it, and it's something that has to be addressed. And speaking of both parties, I personally think the solution lies in perhaps expanding our idea of democracy from beyond a bipartisan system to a multi-party system. And that's what we're going to talk about right now.
Yes, another major issue that we wanted to touch on was the extreme partisanship, the exclusion of third parties, things like that, where nowadays you're looking and people are voting with their ticket, most notably in Congress. You're seeing incredible partisanship, party line divides. That's one of the issues that led us into the near debt ceiling crisis. And you're seeing a lot of this times where Democrats vote with Democrats, Republicans vote with Republicans. There's no more reaching across the aisle. It's very partisan. You also see exclusions of things like third parties. I mean,
oh, definitely.
The Libertarian Party, Green Party, some of these third parties have gotten a huge resurgence. I mean, if you go online,
definitely,
you see tons of support.
I can think of some of the largest. Libertarian is the third largest. Green Party is somewhere in there. There's the Freedom and Justice Party, and I believe there's the Constitution Party. So there are all these parties that have interesting ideas that branch off just from, Republican and Democrat. So it's not just black and white. There's these gray areas that people can choose from, they can select from, and that could fix our issues, because a lot of times people are forced to choose straight on issues they might not all agree with. Like, for instance, if you're against abortion but you're pro-union, you're kind of out of luck, because the Republicans are very, generally speaking, they're anti-abortion, but they're also very anti-union. So it's questions like that that just leaves you kind of out, and you don't really know what to do. Mm-hmm. And I believe if we had restructurings in our political system that allowed people to truly, vote, decide on the issues they truly care about, what they believe, we could have a lot more accomplished. It'd be like Europe in a sense. And I'm not praising everything Europe's done. A lot of European countries, their parliamentary systems are disasters. Like Italy, which can't form a stable government that lasts longer than 6 months. I know that's an exaggeration, but
places where their prime ministers get thrown in jail. It's a mess. And
our system is surprisingly stable for what it is. But hey, bipartisan, one party away from a autocracy.
One of the longest lasting democratic republics at all. I mean, really. I mean, if you think about it, because that's what we are. We are a republic. It's a democratic.
We're one of the first.
We're one of the first, and we're one of the longest lasting.
Definitely. I mean, you could say
it's difficult to do what we do.
The French Republic didn't last very long.
Not very
did
long.
it? I mean,
I think it would be very difficult to come across some of these political reforms, because you're asking the people in office to reform the way they do things. It's like asking a criminal what laws should be written. Hey, would you like to make stealing legal? I mean, it's very difficult like that. You have a lot of stuff to do with lobbying, special interest groups, super PACs, heavy campaign donations. I mean, really, campaign donations are huge. There's no way. I think. There's no way that third parties in many elections, especially smaller ones, could get enough funding to do this. I mean, they can't afford the political ads, the outreach. Yeah. And that's one of the major issues.
And a lot of these parties have passed mandates that prevent these smaller parties from even appearing on the ballots. For instance, I believe this was in Ohio. Could be wrong. I'm just trying to remember this off the top of my head. A candidate for the Green Party, to get his name on the ballot, had to get 72,000 signatures. Now, a Republican candidate had to only get 3,000 because of this rule. And the Republicans are the big party in this area, so obviously the guy's gonna get on the ticket, and the Green Party guy has no chance whatsoever of ever being on the ballot. And the big two parties, Democrats and Republicans, have used this for the longest time to keep down these additional ideas. Now, I can think of occasionally a third party coming along that actually gets a sizable portion of the vote, if you ever heard of Ross Perot.
Yeah.
But that's once in a lifetime kind
if
of
this
thing.
Tea Party movement continues, which is insane, I think we could possibly see a branch off there. I mean, what happened in Canada recently, their Liberal Party split into two parties under the same circumstances that the Conservative Party is having these divides now.
Because I look at how things are basically set up, and this Tea Party movement I could see breaking off of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party kind of maintaining in the middle. Inside the Democratic Party, there is a small caucus of democratic socialism. Very small, though. Like, it's not sizable.
Not the size of the Tea Party, but there are extremists in
There are extremists in both parties. Some you got to note, though, as far as parties are concerned. America is a center-right country, regardless of whether you're Democrat or Republican. The Democrats are slightly more to the left, but they're still right-wing by most other countries' standards. Absolutely. There is no left-wing equivalent in America. Is that a bad thing? Maybe. In my opinion, it's not. But, There are others who would disagree.
It has a lot to do with a lot of the principles
Exactly. Like as a country, we advocate private ownership of things, individuality and stuff, things that left-wing thought conflicts with. So it's not hard to believe why America is pretty right-wing. But I think finding a good balance of concepts, of ideals, is probably the best solution to our problems, which is why I wholly support the libertarian movement. And I still try to, acknowledge the arguments put forth by the Green Party, which is a kind of an eco-socialist kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't entirely agree with them at all. In fact, I mostly disagree with them. But I commend them for getting arguments out there that people won't talk about. Same thing for the Freedom and Justice Party and the Constitutionalists. People who want to say, hey, there's this additional alternate way of looking at things. And that's maybe how it should be.
You see this in the media a lot. MSNBC being labeled as a mostly liberal source. You have Fox News being labeled as a conservative source, contrary to what they say. This is pretty much where they've been labeled, depending on their personalities. You have CNN. I'm not completely sure where they are. Personally, they've been in the news a lot for messing up recently.
It's kind of becoming MSNBC. Like you see basically...
It's working that direction.
There's like... If I can use this pencil as an analogy, there's the Republican side of things, there's the Democratic side of things, and this is media. And media is, a large chunk of it is controlled by Democrats. But one significant company is Republican controlled, and that is the Fox Corporation, the Fox News Corporation.
Despite their fair and balanced motto.
But they are big, though, big enough to offset almost the other news channels being Democrat controlled. So there is a balance between Republican and Democrat. However, there's no say for the third parties. The third parties have had to retreat essentially to the internet as their venue of getting across their ideals.
Which should not be underestimated.
No, not at all. But they've been chased off of the mainstream television. And there's still a lot of people in America who don't use the internet regularly, especially the older voting, the older more, I don't know what the right word is to describe them.
Less tech savvy.
The less tech savvy people who just, they watch TV. That's how, read newspapers, watch TV. That's their primary way of getting their news. So that newspaper and television media is mostly controlled by the two parties.
I mean, I personally encourage you to get your information from a varied source. I mean...
Make your own opinion.
Yeah, make your own opinion, absolutely. I get my news from all over. I don't just choose one news site. If you look into my internet browser, you'll see tons of different news sources, including both Fox News and MSNBC, right next to each other. Because it's important to get a varied news source. It's important to fact check, because not just because one news source reports it doesn't mean it's fully true or true at all. You definitely have to check that.
It's all about balance.
But I would like to thank you, Brady, for coming on the program.
No problem. It was a lot of fun, and I hope to do this regularly.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get some more people on here.
Yeah, we'd like to see you back.
Have good old debates.
Absolutely. As always, you can log online to www.gbnewsbreak.com, Facebook and Twitter, to see this interview, the other news shows that we've done in the past, and to get frequent news updates and more about our shows.
And GVTV.
And GVTV, absolutely.
GVTV.
If you are not watching this on GVTV, I highly encourage you to do so. That is Verizon Channel 36 and Xfinity Channel 16. So thanks for watching, everybody.
Yes.
And
thank you for your time.
I will see you on Friday.